Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
J.D., I'm John Bachman. Thanks for sticking around and watching with us. More information continues to come out now about the shooting at Fort Hood military base. Earlier this week, President Obama attended a memorial service for the victims of the Fort Hood shooting. He said the shooting tears at wounds still raw from 5 years ago when another tragic incident happened, and the healing will take years from this most recent incident. But military observers say an even more significant battle is brewing after the latest shooting, and that's with the stigma associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, if you want to still call it that, because the shooter was being tested for PTSD. Many observers believe employers and many others think of Lopez and his mental instability when they might consider hiring vets returning from Afghanistan or elsewhere in the near future. And joining us right now to talk about this is Tim Malloy. He's a documentary film producer. He also has traveled overseas many times, has been embedded with our troops, and he's here to talk to us today about this issue. Tim, it's good to see you.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you, Tim. And your work now is taking you into the realm of documentaries and all that our military confronts, but obviously in the headlines now, post-traumatic stress. I'll stop and probably take out disorder because former President Bush and others have said we need to treat this as a syndrome rather than a disorder. Your take on what the former president and others are saying?
Well, I think, yeah, the stigma that goes along with those four letters, it could be dropped. I think PTS is what you hear from doctors now, more or less. You have to, you know, of the 2.5 million people who have served, put on uniforms in Iraq and Afghanistan, nearly a third of them have some sort of mental condition, which is a syndrome, not necessarily a disorder.
And as we're looking at this as a problem that we're going to have to deal with for years to come, Tim, is there any way at this point to kind of gauge or ballpark how much investment it's going to take to deal with this down the road for 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years?
The people I've interviewed, a lot of experts and docs over there, call this a tidal wave of people coming home. PTS presents itself maybe a year or two into your return home. So we don't even know quite yet what kind of investment it's going to take. The VA does a good job of getting you home, patching you up, they drop you off, and then it's your family's issue. It's a huge cost in homes. And that's what's going to happen here, because the military only covers you so far.
And what about the amount of mental health professionals, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and so forth and so on that are going to be needed to deal with this tidal wave of guys coming back?
That is ultimately the question, because you can want to kill yourself one night and call the VA and you've got an appointment 2 months later. And there's a big move on by a lot of retired military to create these centers, these call help centers, not even psychologists or docs, veterans who realize this is a crisis and you need to set this up. This is something, if the private sector could step up, it would be huge.
And maybe a volunteer opportunity for a lot of folks. And one time I was covering a job fair for returning vets, and I had the chance to talk to a guy who came back from World War II. He was a vet of Iwo Jima, and he was telling me about the time after that very intense battle, and he was on a Navy ship with his platoon mates for about 6 weeks before he got back to the United States. And a lot of these guys now, thanks to the advancements in technologies, they're in a war zone, they get injured, they're in a hospital, they get patched up, and they're back home with their families in a very short amount of time later. Is that part of the healing process, maybe a little bit of time to readjust back into society?
I again go back to my experts who say, you know, we teach these young people how to kill, we don't teach them how to step it down when they come home. You end up sitting in the den of your mom's house with all these memories and the stuff rattling around your brain. So yeah, there's a lot of people who believe there should be some process to ease you back into society.
Tim, you have gone from our society into conflict, what, 19 times now?
It's 14.
14, okay. and there's about to be a 15th time. You're headed back to Afghanistan. From your perspective, being embedded with our military, what do you see our men and women going through, and what do you bring back personally from that experience?
I go in and out. I'm usually not at any risk or danger, so I don't overplay that. I have seen come back on air medical flights where there are people, young people, still wearing their body armor, and they won't take it off until they get to Germany. They're sitting with their helmets, their full battle rattle on. In some cases, I've seen them cut it off. That's how traumatized they are. Now, there's less of it now because we're not as much in the conflict. We're still very much there. We should all remember there's a lot of folks there in harm's way. But I've seen levels of, you'll see someone with an amputated leg on a stretcher, but next to them is someone who's against a wall of an aircraft shaking. So I've seen every level of what war can do, and it continues. And as I said, it presents itself generally more when you come home, and that's the tidal wave effect we have to really be concerned about, because this thing is not really hit full stride yet.
coming home, and it's been chronicled in the wake of past conflicts, including World War II. On the big screen, the Academy Award winner, The Best Years of Our Lives, dealing with World War II veterans. It's been made manifest for every conflict since then. But in the here and now, with our Gulf War and Afghanistan veterans getting back here, we've often heard, and I've used this on the stump as a recovering congressman, the best social program is a job.
Yeah.
If people are able to get back to work, does that help ease them back into society?
Just in the last year, there's been a huge push by major corporate leaders to try to get this going, to employ the veterans, and that is the best thing going. However, you have to keep in mind a lot of these people are traumatized and may not be able to hold the job. You know, a lot of these people, you know, all the best intentions in the world. The real question is, yes, you hire them, but are they qualified? The military trains you well, but what are you bringing home inside you? That's really the issue.
Well, I get good advances. Go ahead, JD. I'll follow up.
Well, I was just saying, and it logically follows, with all the talk of post-traumatic stress, does that actually serve as a barrier now, a disincentive to hire veterans? Is now the stereotype made manifest by tragic incidents like we just saw for the second time at Fort Hood?
That's a terrific question. I don't know the answer. I mean, I think again, the employers have great intentions, but I think when someone walks into human resources, there might be another level of questions you have to ask and concerns you might have. I hate to say it because we love these kids, but a lot of them are coming back wounded mentally.
Yeah, and as we look at this, you know, just a few days removed from the memorial service of the tragedy at Fort Hood, if there is going to be a silver lining to any of this, is it the fact that we are talking about this, you know, out in a public specter where, you know, we know a lot of these guys do not like to talk about what they're going through inside their own minds. But we're talking about it, another terrible shooting. But is that the only possible silver lining here?
I think it is. It's funny, not funny, my dad was a World War II veteran, and he was really in combat, and he never, ever talked about it. That generation did not, the World War II guys. I think people are more apt to talk about it now. They're really good programs, not just Wounded Warriors. There are people doing poetry, you know, helping people write books, helping people cranial sacral therapy. There's all these different kinds of modalities now that are being kicked in and helping these kids. But yeah, I think talking about it is the most important thing. But Marines don't talk much.
No,
you know? Special Forces guys don't come back. I'm with these people all the time.
But the writing is important. Ron Capps is a guy we've interviewed before as the Veterans Writing Project, and a lot of guys can't maybe vocalize it, but they can put pen to paper or write it down, and that helps with them a lot.
Yeah.
And others document it. As documentary producers, you're headed back in just a matter of weeks. Less than a minute left.
Yeah.
Tell us your goals to go back into the war zone in Afghanistan now.
This is a unique thing. I met a gentleman who's 68 years old who's a Vietnam chopper pilot. He's a Fort Lauderdale, Florida lawyer. He lost his leg when his chopper was shot down. I met him. I said, would you like to go to Afghanistan? Would you like to go back and see the dust-off Army helicopter guys? Generations later, they're still doing those missions. He said, I'd love to go meet those guys and fly with them and help you tell that story. So he's a guy who has probably suffered PTS, who's had this remarkable life and career, and he's going to go get on a helicopter and we're going to take him out on a mission.
Well, that's going to be a documentary worth watching. We wish you well as you head back to the war zone, and we thank you for your insights.
You guys are doing great work. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Pleasure talking to you, Tim. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
More to come here on America's Forum. Make sure you stay tuned for Tim Molloy's new documentary about this chopper pilot going back into the battle area in Afghanistan. A Vietnam vet should be very interesting. We'll be back here on America's Forum after this.